All right, well, hello. And thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's kind of disconcerting. You're probably seeing me twice, which is not ideal, but I'm going to hide so I can't see myself, which is better for me. So anyway, so as you know from the program, this program is about developing grants to help students succeed. And first of all, I'm Ann Shepard. I'm the Director of Grants and Resource Development. I've been at PGCC since December 2019. But before that, I was at another community college where I served in a similar role for about 11 years. So I'm kind of at my 12th year doing work similar to what I'm doing. But here's what's really important. This is our office. So I know some of you have dealt with us, like Beatrice, for example. I know you've dealt with us quite a bit. This is our whole team, and we're part of the Office of Institutional Advancement. So first, I'll mention Kevin Bellamy, the Program Development Manager. We also have Diane Butler, who's the Manager of Grants Management Services, Kalika White, the Grants Compliance Officer, and then there's me. I'm the latecomer. I'm the newest member of our team, basically. So all of us work together. So even though I'm the one talking, I thought that was really important for you to know. And I know actually the team members are on the call too. So thank you for being here. So first of all, when you think about grants, some of you are here probably because you're looking for some funds. And I wanted to ask to start, is it really all about the money? And that's kind of a rhetorical question because I know everybody on this call has students at heart. And so for those of us in the grants office, including me, it's really not the money that motivates us. And it's not the red tape either. So one of the things that motivates us, and I hope, team, that you don't mind, I'm kind of speaking for all of us here, is that grant resources, and this is how we fit with the theme of the Professional Development Day, can be used to bring equity to situations where there was none or where it was, severely lacking. So ideally, grants bring deep need and resources together. So this is what motivates us when we're dealing with the red tape that can be involved. Another thing that motivates us are just helping the college meet its goals. So all of you know on the call that these are some of our main college goals. Student success, number 1, regional impact and organizational excellence. So whenever we think about grants, one of the reasons why we have a grants office is to help coordinate grants efforts so that we can help, because we see all of the grants coming in. We can hopefully help team members work together to make sure the grants help us meet our goals. And this is just a short list of what grants can do for the students and the community. And most of you have seen this. For example, Beatrice, not to pick on you, but Upward Bound, Veterans Upward Bound is a primary example of how grants can help serve the community. And I'll just let you know ahead of time, it's hard for me to see the chat while I'm sharing this. So if there are questions in the chat, if it's possible for somebody to let me know, that'd be great. So again, this is why we thought that we fit into the Professional Development Day, even though we know grants aren't always thought of in that way. But really, this is what it's all about. So today, because I figured some of you probably are looking for some tips or you're learning to navigate the college process for seeking grants, I wanted to focus primarily on 2 things. The first is finding and selecting grants to pursue. And the second is just sort of an overview of developing grants. And even though I've been talking a lot so far, if anybody wants to break in with any question or comment, I'm not sure with this format if you can comment directly, but if you can, I very much welcome that. So here are some places that you can find and select grants. And I know, Kevin, I'm sure you have others that you've thought of too. These are just some of the top ones that we look at again and again. One is the other is federalregister.gov. And the Federal Register is where the main federal grants opportunities would be announced. Another one that not everybody knows about is the Maryland Governor's Grants Office. So I'm not sure, I think I'll show you that really quick. No, we'll see if we can go there. So can you see the Governor's Grants Office okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Maryland Governor's Grants Office. Usually this time of year, they're having a big conference. They did not have it this year because of COVID-19. But this is something that the grants office usually goes to, and at my past college we did too. But for example, they list some state grants here. This is a good overview of where to find them. They even list some foundation grants, although this isn't an exhaustive list. They do have some of them here. And then in addition to the sites I mentioned to you, they tell you some things about federal grants here. And then they also have like past training sessions. Like here are some, whoops, they kicked me out, but they have some training sessions that they mentioned there too. So I'm gonna stop sharing for just a moment so I can get back to the PowerPoint, but I wanted to ask, does anybody have any questions so far? I see something in the chat. Okay, I see somebody telling me how to do technical, which is helpful. So any questions so far about what we've kind of run through?
Yeah, for the people that attended, that are interested or whatever, could you send out a link to that page?
Yes, definitely. And in fact, if you want, I can send you the PowerPoint and it will have the links.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, so now this is where my technical stuff, I gotta get back to the PowerPoint I was on. So there we go.
I have a quick question, Anne.
Sure.
The website this is Beatrice,
Yes.
with Trio Veterans Upward Bound. The website that you just shared with us, you pointed out the training sessions. Are the majority of those, do they tend to be free or they come with a cost?
The annual conference comes with a cost, but you can look at past sessions, usually free of charge. So like, and let me see if you want, I can try to go back in there. Let's take
Oh no, you don't have to. I just didn't know if you knew off the top of your head. I can always go back and research that. Thank you.
No, that's fine. So actually, so here you can see, this is the big conference I was talking about, the Governor's Grants Conference 2019. You can at least see some of the presentations they did. Can you see that okay?
I don't think you're sharing your screen.
Oh, that's probably why you can't see it. Okay, just a moment and let me get back to, I turned it off. But anyway, while I wasn't showing you my screen, I did verify that you can see past presentations. I'm going to get back to where we were now. Okay. Any other questions before we move on?
Hi, Ann. I just, this is Kalika White, the Grants Compliance Officer, and I just wanted to mention about the Maryland Governor's Grants Office.
Yes.
Every year they do have a conference. I'm not sure what they're going to do this year. And it's usually, I believe, $99. It used to be free, but they charge because they basically give you a nice meal. They usually have a keynote from OMB They have breakout sessions from various federal agencies, and actually you can talk to these people. So if you want to think about grants or if you are in grants, I think the Maryland Grants Conference is a very good conference to attend, because you can actually talk to people from Department of Education, Department of Labor, and various other federal agencies. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. I totally agree with you. And actually, just as part of the preparing for this, I did check, and it looks like they're not holding that conference this year, because I was thinking, oh no, we missed it, but just because of COVID-19, they're not. But I very much agree. If you're interested in pursuing grants resources, it's a very good conference to go to. And in fact, you've probably heard this too, Kalika. I think that people from all over the country have come to that conference, not just Maryland.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's one of the biggies. And then circling back to Beatrice's question, you can view presentations from the past, however. So I know you couldn't see my screen when I was looking at that, but if you click on conferences or trainings, you can see some of them from the past, at least the PowerPoints, and possibly some of the recordings. So any other questions? Okay, so can you see my screen again?
Yes.
I'm seeing a PowerPoint.
Great, that's what we want. So GuideStar.org is something that not a ton of people know about. So GuideStar.org has free memberships, and this is where you can look up private foundations. So like if I know that Citi gives grants, like Citibank, which they do, I can look up their foundation, and I can actually look up their tax forms, their 990s, and see how much they gave. It's usually lagging by a few years, but I can say, see what they gave in 2018 and to whom they gave it. So that can help you see if a funder would typically serve a college or not. And I came from a very low budget grants office. We didn't have a lot of funds to devote to membership. So that was really invaluable for me because it was free. You can get a paid membership that does more, but I've always found that the free one is just fine. And then of course, another place to look, for example, if you have a vendor you really like I like X kind of software, sometimes it's worth looking at their websites to see if they have a foundation that gives resources. So those are just some places to look for grants. Before we move on to the next topic, are there any other places, Kevin or anybody else, that you'd like to mention that maybe you found grants before? Okay, I think we're good. So the next thing that comes as part of the grants development process is how do we decide which grants to pursue? And this is always a tough decision, and sometimes it's because there's very little time to make that decision. And sometimes it's because we just have a lot of priorities. Like even in the grants office, we're dealing with 50 some grants. Maybe if you count all those in development, it gets closer to 70. So deciding which grants to pursue is not always an easy task. So as you're thinking about what grants the college would pursue or that you would pursue as part of your work, how are some ways do you think we could decide which grants to pursue? You could either speak or put it in the chat box, whatever you would like. Anybody have any ideas on that?
how do we decide which grants to pursue?
Yeah, how do you decide? Oh, I see. Trouble unmuting. Grants that follow current workforce trends, right? So like if we have 5 grants to choose from, how do we choose correct, right? Grants that tie into the college's strategic goals, specific populations, right? Priorities based on what we're planning to fund. Those are all great answers. So I knew you would already have some answers for that. So that's why I wanted to ask. So at the college, we have a process for helping to make that happen, helping the decisions to happen. So because we want to coordinate everything, the best place to come if you're thinking about a grant is to us. And again, remember, it's not about the red tape. It's actually about helping you to get the resources your department or your students need. I'm going to kind of go off into cyberspace again and show you the portal. And I want to show you where the grant initiation form is. So I think you all can still see where I'm going, right? Okay. So I'm going to scroll down to Office of Institutional Advancement. And here I am. And then I'm going to click on Grants and Resource Development. And here you'll see a wonderful document that Kalika is going to talk more about at 2 o'clock. And then here is our grant initiation form. I'm going to show you that for those of you who maybe haven't seen it. So I know some of you have seen this, so I won't go through everything. But this is the latest version. So we've made a few updates just this summer. So please make sure you're using the most recent version, because by the way, it'll make it easier for you if you do, because we used to require a concept paper and we no longer do that. So this asks you some pertinent questions to help make a good decision about the grant and to help us help you do that as well. So you can see, we look at the due date, of course. And here, just as some of you mentioned, we look at the strategic goals and how the grant might connect to those. And here we have a resource planning checklist where we kind of run down what might be needed in the grant. And then here we list the proposal development team, and then we get a whole bunch of signatures. So I don't want anybody to be scared off by this form. We actually can walk you through this and help you complete it. In fact, typically we do. So it's great if you can fill it out and send us whatever you can. But if you have any questions at all, or if you just feel like you can't figure out how to fill it out, or don't have the time to fill it out, we can typically help you with that. And then in terms of getting signatures, please don't get hung up on that either, because we can help you with that as well. So we use DocuSign at this time in our remote posture, and we can help you get these signatures. So are there any questions about the grant initiation form and how that works?
There was one in the chat.
Okay, let me take a look here. I gotta move something out of the way to be able to see it. So if you have a project in mind, at what point should we approach the grant office? I would say right away. So it's fine to send me an email or send Kevin an email and say, hey, I'm thinking about this grant. That would be a good time to do it. So I would say as close to the beginning of the process as you can. because we can help you work through it. And we also know what other grants the institution is applying for. So for example, somebody came to me about a MOST OER grant, which is a common grant for faculty. And I was able to help that person see that even though the grant says it comes to the faculty member, it goes through the institution. So we need to do this form, and then the college works it out with the faculty member. So the best, you can either do some of the form and send us the form, or just let us know, hey, I'm interested in this grant, here are the details, and then we can help you fill out the form. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, so we should essentially find a grant that matches up with what we're looking to do, and then contact the grants office.
That is sometimes true, but you can also let us know, hey, our students really need X. And then we can also look for that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that probably answers your question a little bit better. Sorry, it took me a little time to get there.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, so even if you have an idea, but you don't know what the vehicle for that idea will be yet, you can approach us with an idea. And I can't guarantee we'll find you the funding for it, but actually we're hoping, we like that approach, because then we kind of know when we're looking at grant newsletters and things, we know what kind of grants to look for.
Cool, I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Sure. And I should have mentioned, but I don't have it in the PowerPoint. What typically happens then is one of our team, probably either Kevin or me at this point, will do a funding alert, which will summarize sort of the grant's main points and the things that we need to consider. And then we share that with college leaders, as well as back with you, whoever initiated the project. And then together, we try to come to a consensus on whether we will pursue the grant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint itself. Okay. So that's where the grants initiation form is. So then, as I was discussing, these are some of the ways that we try to help you and the college leadership decide whether to go for a grant. And again, it's not all about the money. Of course, we're thinking about the money, especially in these budget crunch times, but we also we try to figure out, does it fit with our overall vision for the future? Does it fit with other projects we plan, and so forth? And that's, again, why we have a grants office, partly because I'm a former English teacher. So if I'm in the English department, I may not know what somebody in information technology is doing. It might be that they're doing a project that will complement what I want to do. So the grants office can help you sort of coordinate that way across divisions and across departments. Some other things that we asked are, does this grant give us more benefits than costs? So believe it or not, some grants are probably not worth going for. And I know that's horrible for the director to say that, but if it gives us few resources and requires a lot of match and requires us to do things that we really don't want to do, then it's probably not worth pursuing. Most grants will be worth pursuing, and we encourage them, but we do try to think about costs and benefits. We also think about sustainability, but I would stress, after a grant, things don't have to be sustained in exactly the same way they were during a grant. So you don't necessarily have to think, okay, if I hire 5 people, 5 people must continue after the grant ends. Sustainability is a little bit more nuanced than that. It could be that the project continues, but it's more incorporated into the work of other staff. It could be that some of the staff continue and some do not. So sustainability is kind of a nuanced concept. And then we also think about, does it have a reasonable development timeline and chance for success? And reasonable means different things to different people. I'm sure that Kevin can attest to that. So believe it or not, for a federal grant, really the best timeline would be months, because federal grants can be very complex and you want to make sure you've got all the players on board, you've got everybody in agreement, you've got everything thought through. But in reality, do months always happen? No. So, but that is something we think about, the reasonable development timeline. And then also a lot of times we can tell how competitive something's going to be by how much they're giving out and how much they've given in the past. So before we get to the actual grant writing process, are there any questions at this point? I know I've been talking a lot. Okay. So let's say your
I
grant.
can ask a question for some people that may not be thinking about it.
Thank you.
Do I have to contact my dean or my chair or my supervisor before pursuing a grant or before coming to the grants office?
Yes, yeah, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is that is something I should have mentioned. So I'll notice that that grant initiation form does require your immediate supervisor's sign off. And getting back to, I think it was Mr. Lee, your question, it's best if you have approached your supervisor prior to coming to us. So we don't want to be in a, an awkward position where we're saying yes and they don't know about it. So thank you for asking that, Kalika. Okay, because we want to make sure your supervisor and your team is on board with it. Any other questions or comments? That was perfect, by the way. Okay, so we have a go. Let's say we have a go. So again, this is going to be teamwork, and this is where it kind of depends what kind of grant you're going for and how complex it is and what you're how comfortable you are with grant writing. So as this is kind of a matrix of responsibilities at the college. I'm going to move this out of the way so you can see that. Okay. So finding grant opportunities, we kind of covered that. That usually comes from these places. And just so you know, this is the Resource Development Council. This is a council of, it's mostly deans and other people from different areas of the college. And we meet with that team about approximately monthly. And that way we can kind of stay in touch with what the college as a whole is doing. And we share grant opportunities. We actually actively look for grant opportunities quite a bit. Dina Wilson, who just joined us, she does that too. So basically we have 3 of us who are constantly looking for grant opportunities. And then we get them from you all, program staff, and then we get them from the deans and VPs via our Resource Development Council. Approval, we already talked about. That's kind of a hand-in-hand process with program staff and with us. This is Grants and Resource Development Office, so you know. The grant request form we covered. And one of the things we'll help you do is make sure that we're eligible to apply. Sometimes people come with opportunities and then unfortunately we find out we're not eligible after all. We, along with the RDC, will help verify that the project fits with our strategic priorities. You can see how project development works and how data works. A lot of times when we're working with a team on a grant, the people that I think are probably in this webinar, you would be the subject matter experts. And we are sort of, Kevin and I know just enough to be dangerous, you might say. So in the past, for example, when I was writing about cybersecurity, like I told you, I'm an English teacher, former English teacher. So I had to rely on the subject matter experts, even though I was doing a lot of the writing too. And I won't go through absolutely everything because I know you can see it. And like I said, I'll be happy to send anybody who wants it this PowerPoint afterwards. So this is just kind of a rundown of all the different steps. We help you with signatures. We'll talk a little bit about in-kind or contributions when we get to the budget part. There, especially with a major federal grant, there are lots of steps that go on behind the scenes. And then the grants office submits all grants. There might be an exception here and there, but by and large, we submit them. So I know this is a big matrix. Any questions about anything? Okay, cool. So now I'm going to get a little bit into grant writing itself, and I want to watch the time. We're at 1:36. I want to leave a little time for questions, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Funders, as you probably know, usually ask about needs first. And this is where, like when I've been working with other grant writers, sometimes this can be a challenge. When we're putting together a grant, we have to think like the funder. So we keep our needs in mind, but we also have to think about their needs. So for example, as people in an academic institution, we have a lot of acronyms. And our funder isn't necessarily going to know those. So we need to explain things and remember that we're explaining them to people who don't live in our world usually. Another thing that the funder's usually going to ask for are objectives or goals. And probably you've all seen this acronym multiple times, but here's one more time. We want them to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Now, I also worked in student services, and sometimes this measurable one used to bother me because I thought, now what I do doesn't necessarily always mean that a student is going to succeed. And that's true. I'm thinking of Upward Bound, and I worked in student support services. But we still have to measure, we have to measure the impact of our activities to the greatest degree we can. So if I have to measure things like student success and completion and try to demonstrate that my activities will have a positive impact on that. This is something else we have to think about when we're setting objectives and goals. We have to ask ourselves, how is it ambitious? When you're thinking about what's ambitious, we have to not think about every day. We have to think about, we're getting all these resources. How is it still ambitious? We also have to think about, is it attainable? And in my experience working with various grant teams, some people might err on the side of being too ambitious. Some might err on the side of making it a little too easy to attain. So we kind of have to walk in the middle of those two things. So any questions? I realize that ambitious and attainable are value judgments. So Any questions or comments so far? I see something. No, okay. Okay, thank you. All right. So next we get to the plan of operation. This is where you have to spell out who does things, what happens, when, where, and why. And this is where a lot of people are pretty comfortable because, like say, when I was working in student services, I dealt with the day-to-day activities, on an individual basis. So I was meeting with students individually. That was part of our management plan. But one thing to think about when you're putting a grant together, and I put this up because there's kind of an old joke about when people are invested in a project, sometimes they get too much into what color are we painting the shed? Instead of talking about, do we need a shed? So a grant is more about whether we need the shed or not. It's not so much about what, how we're going to paint it, or if that trim's going to be white, or if it's going to be yellow, or if it's going to be purple. So we want to not get too hung up on too many details, but we have to provide enough details to be convincing. So that's always kind of a difficulty. Evaluation is part of most grants. So we want to make sure that we're making a positive difference. And I always say that you should think of evaluation from the very moment you start to put your grant together, because you're going to have to measure progress. For example, a lot of grants require you to measure if people get jobs. That's not easy. So you have to think through, how are you going to tell if the people got jobs? Are you going to call them? What are you going to do? Now we get to everybody's favorite part, the budget. And I'm mostly thinking about federal grants, but this really applies to all grants. So the first question to ask about your prospective budget are the costs allowable? I know we're at 141 already, so I better speed up. And these are some places where you can see if a cost is allowable. And of course, we will help you with this. And in fact, a lot of times we're the main people working with this. But one of the reasons I'm telling you all these things is the more we can empower other people to be good at grant making, and maybe you already are good, the more resources we can bring to the college. So that's the first question. Second is it allocable? And that can be a difficult concept. Like here's an example. Is it okay to buy something and use it to serve 200 students if the grant project will only serve 50 students? So I wanted to see what you think about that. How would you handle that? Like if you're buying a product and you really want to use it for 200 students, but the grant will only serve 50. How would you sort of put that in your budget? And I see a question in the chat from Julia. Qualitative measurements are sometimes included in grants. So I would say they often prefer quantitative measurements, but sometimes qualitative measurements are necessary. So like if you want to measure an attitudinal change, that's probably really more qualitative, and you can do that through a survey or other instrument. And Beatrice said for in-kind donations, right? And I think you already have the point. So basically, if I'm going to buy something and I want to use it for 200 students, I can only charge 1/4 of the cost to the grant. And then I would have to find other resources to pay the rest of the cost. A question that came up at my last college was, can I buy like a tablecloth or something like that that says at that time it was HTC, that says the college name on it. And usually that's a little bit of a gray area too. You want it to be applicable to the specific project. So you want things to be really specific to, say, cybersecurity or whatever your program is, not general for the whole college.
Hello, Ann, can you hear me?
Yes.
I would say the only time there may be an exception to that rule is if you're working with, for instance, a Title I school in a local education agency where
Right.
all of the students in the school are eligible for those resources. So you may only have 50 students who meet the qualification for Title I, but
Right.
all of the students are eligible. So that might be the only exception.
Right, and that's a good point, Kevin. So there could be exceptions to that, but generally, now the problem that I'll just say that we used to have at our other college, my last college, was, for example, if somebody is charged 100% time to a grant, they should only work with that grant. Technically, if the grant is paying 100% of their time, they should not be working on anything else. And that would be an example of something that's allocable to that specific project. I know we're about ready to run out of time. Are costs reasonable? That's something to think about. I went to a workshop once where they asked, is a horse reasonable? And actually, the answer is yes, if you're doing a project on, like, equine therapy or something like that. This question right here, are costs reasonable? That's where you see the most gray area and the most controversy. And that's kind of getting over into Kalika's presentation, but this is where I've seen the most difficulty determining whether something is reasonable, because it's a matter of judgment. But sometimes you can look at how many students you're serving and see if it's reasonable considering that. You can look at the return on the investment, and that helps you determine if something is reasonable. A lot of people ask what indirect costs are. Those are costs that the funder gives us to help us be able to keep the lights on and do other things that are necessary to maintain the grant. And those, if you have more specific questions about those, we can definitely answer that. Again, I know we're running out of time. Leverage funds or match, or Beatrice before mentioned in-kind contributions. Those are things you should often include in grants to show that you've got a vested interest in making it happen the way it's supposed to happen. And I'm speeding up because we have 5 minutes left. These are just some resources that actually one of our consultants shared with us that I'm also sharing with you. And when you get the PowerPoint, if you would like it, this will give you some more things that you can look at on your own. And again, I really want to mention, in addition to our grants office team, we really see grants efforts as teamwork. We know that some people are more comfortable writing than others. Some grant administrators are really comfortable writing, and that's great. Then we'll be more just editors. Some are not, and that's great too. We'll work with you to help you get what you need to get together. And you are the content experts. As I said, we learn just enough to be dangerous. And then we will help you set up a development timeline for most grants, just because submission can sometimes take longer than people realize. So this is really important to not underestimate the time needed. And I realize that I talked a lot. So I think we've got like 2 minutes or so for questions. Are there any questions that you thought of along the way, or maybe just some burning question that you have that maybe we can help with? I think I see.
Hi, Anne. It's Janet. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. This is a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My question is, with grants and partnership being kind of one of the key indicators for the success of a grant,
Yes.
how does PGCC present insurance for internships?
That's a good question. That is probably something we would have to get back to you on, unless either Kalika or Diane know anything about that, because that would be an administrative thing that would be covered in a larger way, other than just through the grants office. So you're asking, how will your interns be covered, like for workers' comp and stuff like that?
Right, or just, for liability, exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
it would be for both parties, both PGCC and then the invested partner.
Yeah, Janet, can you send us an email so we can do a little research? I have something on the top of my head, but I don't want to state it and it's incorrect.
Sure.
So if you send us an email, then we'll get back to you.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and I see some of you asking for the presentation, and I'd be happy to send it to you. So I'm hoping the technical team can help me preserve this chat. So I have the email addresses. Oh, and there's O2. I worked with you just recently. Hello. So I'm so grateful to all of you for attending. I really appreciate this time to talk with you. And again, if you have any questions, we have, well, virtually anyway, we have open doors. So please do contact us because we'd love to hear from you. And we will see you at the next grants workshop. If we hope you're coming to that one with Kalika. And again, grants are a team effort. I see some of you in the chat who have helped us. Julia, you're one of them. O2, you're one of them. I'm not mentioning everybody. Obviously, Janet, everybody, Beatrice, so many of you have helped. And we're so grateful for the teamwork. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I hope you all have a rest. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
You too, Ann. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you too.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. And my technical, the technical team, is there a way to send me?
Yes, Chairperson. Okay, I will send you those emails.
Okay, yeah.
In a few minutes, okay?
That's great.
So,
even if you just send me the chat script, I
all
can
right,
put
that's
them up.
cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's cool. Okay.
All right, thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate your help with this.
No problem. You are very welcome.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'll log off. I'm going to stop sharing too. Okay. All right.
Great job, Ann.
Well, great job. Thank you for your help.
I guess I'm going to Kalika's session now.
Yep. I will be there too. I'm going to come too. So
Great turnout, Ann.
I saw that. Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, that
was really a great turnout. Good questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Diane.
Okay. See you later.
All right. See you later. You all are the best. So thank you. Okay.
How do you do this?